The early progress report shows UCLA has lost the Nico Iamaleava and Joey Aguilar trade to Tennessee.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. Today, we're talking about who's won the trade through the first 2 weeks, UCLA or Tennessee. And then we'll dive into a heartfelt story for a new incoming UCLA baseball transfer that we're all going to want to root for, and he'll fit right in with the Bruins. So getting things started, you had Pete Nakos talking with Joey Aguilar's dad, right? And if you've had enough of parents, fathers, namely, in this Joey Aguilar, Nico Iamaleava saga, well, here's what Joey Aguilar's father had to say in the Pete Nakos On 3 report. The idea is that we have no ill will towards Nico. This is paraphrase quotes. And the idea that for what it's looked like so far, the fans, the stats, they're thankful for the trade. It's like, thank you for not having us go to UCLA and be 0-2 and look bad and hurt the draft stock and the future playing career of Joey Aguilar. He didn't say all those things, but he can imply all those things. Basically, the idea is we've won the trade. I think you can see who's won the trade, implying UCLA and Nico have lost the trade. Who's the better player? The better player is clearly Nico, and it will always be Nico. So the idea that Nico has fumbled the bag, right? When he had a 3-year, $8 million deal to go down to $1.2 million in this season with less benefits, more taxes, and more taxing hits on the body, and less team results, less personal results, then yes, Nico is losing this deal so far through 2 weeks. For Joey Aguilar in his first couple of games, 16 for 28, 3 touchdown passes, including a 73-yarder against Syracuse and 34 yards rushing. He was almost even more excellent against East Tennessee State, 74% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, a 50-yard bomb, and had only 1 fumble, no picks through the first 2 games. For Joey, he went from a homeless quarterback in the spring portal who wasn't the most sought-after quarterback going to UCLA, and the next thing you know, became highly coveted by a CFP contender. You don't know where Tennessee was going to go in 2025, and they clearly had the O-line pop and everything that Nico's camp was wondering and hoping to say that, oh, UCLA is going to have this better than Tennessee, and that's where the Tennessee fans laughed and said, okay, you sure about that? And we've seen Nico be sacked and taken down for losses on different plays, and only his scrambling ability and his clear athleticism have kept him from taking even harder hits in the backfield. And Joey Aguilar learning almost 2 offenses, all right? He had to go from, all right, App State to UCLA in the spring, learn 1 offense, and then go learn Josh Heupel's offense. Nico's only had to learn 1. And so far, without a misstep, mostly, Aguilar's been able to coast through. Now, Syracuse is not the same as Utah, and UNLV is much better than ETSU. But still, Aguilar has come through with the help of a vaunted rushing attack from Tennessee, especially against Syracuse, and they've looked much better. So you had Joey's dad saying, thank you, Nico, to Pete Nakos of On 3 for that report. He's like, thank you for the trade. We thank you, which is more, maybe less than Nico thinks. We know it's been more of a behind-the-scenes thing. So if dads are taking shots at dads, I'm not really going to dive into that. But you look at Nico's numbers. Based on completion percentage, actually similar numbers to what Aguilar had against Syracuse. UCLA gets a better defense in Utah. Nico had a 50% completion percentage, threw for a touchdown, 47 yards on the ground, but he did throw for a pick late in that game. Against UNLV, 70% completion percentage, a touchdown in the air, 60 yards on the ground, a rushing touchdown of 30 yards, but he threw the game-sealing pick to Amaris Brown, who's talking trash. All right, so you've got Brown, who's talking trash from UNLV, and that's led to him getting a pick to end the game for the Rebels to beat UCLA. You have Joey Aguilar's kind of camp, maybe not taking shots, but, awry. Thank you for helping our situation for the better, despite what was a scramble mode situation for Joey Aguilar and company earlier this spring. And you've got Nico, who is kind of hurting his stock. Now, through 2 weeks, clear winners. Syracuse and ETSU, not the same caliber as UNLV and Utah. All right, those aren't the same opponents. So the schedule is going to get much tougher for Tennessee in these next couple of weeks. So we'll find out what Joey Aguilar has very soon against some tough teams. Tennessee, they host Georgia this week. All right. So this will be a fun comparison. A week after, one could expect UCLA and Nico to have a bounce back offensive performance where he slings it around for a bunch of yards and a bunch of touchdowns against New Mexico, hopefully, or else Deshaun Foster and UCLA coaching staffs would lose all their jobs if they lose to New Mexico right away. And then you've got where Joey Aguilar is sitting here against Georgia. Now, if Joey Aguilar carves up the Georgia Bulldogs, who didn't exactly have the best performance last week against an FCS, but if he carves up Georgia at home in a primetime midday matchup in a battle of SEC rivals, then yes, it's going to be clear who's won the trade. But so far, in the early progress reports, you get, it's maybe too early in the school year, and you're looking at those progress reports. If your parents, but the kids, you're like, it's 2 weeks. How do I have a progress report? Well, in the college football season, the early season progress reports are in, and Joey is the clear winner. And there's already been the laughter from the Tennessee fans at Nico. Yeah, thank you, UCLA fans, for taking him off your hands. Because the idea is like, wow, they truly treasured Nico out there in Knoxville. And they're embracing Joey even more, and the numbers have proven it. Against lesser opponents, but they've proven it, and he has had a much better situation than what he would have had at UCLA. And UCLA would have not done any better with Joey Aguilar. So if you're saying UCLA has lost this trade, they got less talent, no. But if you're thinking about how they were trying to get better, they got the player who is better. It has yielded 0 results in the win category, hasn't showcased itself in the stats at all because there's a lot of new offensive pieces moving. It's just frustrating to see how this has turned out. So far, through 2 weeks, Joey Aguilar 2-0, UCLA 0-2. Early results, lean Joey. Next, we're going to talk about UCLA's incoming baseball transfer, a story that is, one you want to root for and a guy who's going to fit right in with UCLA and John Savage for a team that's competing for the number 1 spot in the country. But first, let's tell you about Monarch Money, because most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, and if you put up organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting, and it can help link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money, even without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify that you're saving not as much as you thought. You're like, what? Monarch can help you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Cruising on, UCLA Baseball announced all their incoming transfers. 4 transfers for a John Savage club that is expected to be a preseason number 1. I saw a way too early top 25, and I saw Baseball America looking at the 2026 baseball season, a year with UCLA, I think still expected to be at Jackie Robinson in 2026 in Jackie Robinson Stadium, number 1 in the country. So look at all this craziness with John Savage actually pulling into the portal. Here are some players we already knew were coming. Will Gasparino from Texas, a guy who was an SEC baseball all-defensive team honoree in 2025 and was an all-Big 12 selection prior to that for the University of Texas. Has some big pop, should help UCLA in the outfield. Yet Logan Reddeman, a guy who was dominant, freshman of the year for the WCC and all-WCC first-teamer in 2 straight years to start his career at the University of San Diego with elite numbers as a right-handed pitcher. Those are the 2 guys we already knew were coming. Another one that might have slipped through the cracks, Jake Swenson, coming from Linfield University out in Oregon, was the 2025 Northwest Conference Pitcher of the Year. So you're like, okay, interesting, a little less known about him, a non-D1 moving up. And the guy who I teased before, Michael Cunningham, a D2 transfer coming up to D1, a former San Francisco State player who, according to the school's paper, you have the Golden Gate Express talking and detailing with Cunningham on his journey. I was reading about it. He came from a fractured spine in his what should have been his junior year. So he missed all of 2024 with a fractured spine. Then he gets to 2025, and the program's announced, I think, in early March, San Francisco State, one of 3 programs being dropped is their baseball program. So San Francisco State no longer has a baseball program. So for Cunningham, who, just like many of these super seniors, had to deal with recovering and fighting through recruiting during COVID, 2021, and then next thing you know, not really recruited, goes to D2 to get a guaranteed spot. Breaks the San Francisco program record for home runs all time. And that's a program record that's not going to be broken, considering the program is now dropped. So the coach had to help all these players get new opportunities. So Cunningham, coming off a year where at times he was hitting close to 400, more than halfway through the year, was a part of a team that made a regional for San Francisco State, competed in their conference tournaments championship game against Cal State Monterey Bay. And Cunningham hit over 330, 18 bombs, 30 walks, and had at least like a 10-game hitting streak in the middle of that year as an outfielder. Good portion of the season was a DH. I wonder if that's what he's going to be at UCLA or if he'll command an outfield spot. Considering UCLA brought in a Gasparino, you would think that's a defensive wizard who's got some pop coming from Texas. And then you mix in Cunningham, who can add some extra length to this lineup that's expected to be maybe not the Bash brothers, but, you know, you've got Mulavai Lavu, you've got Rock Chalowski, all those guys manning the top of the order. This can give some length to UCLA and some new options to score runs when you're on the road going through heavy travel schedules. So he's come through a fractured back. Or a fractured spine. His program got dropped. You think he's going to fit in with a program that had to battle with not having a baseball field and still might have those struggles if something doesn't change before 2026. I think they're still at Jackie Robinson Stadium, but that's the case right now. He's going to fit right in with UCLA. So you have 2 guys who have showcased at least one potential elite ability, Reddeman and Gasparino coming over from their D1 transfers, and 2 non-D1s that John Savage is taking a chance on. And if the pitcher works out, immediate bolstering to the pitching staff. I'm not sure how Linfield is going to transfer to UCLA playing the Big Ten and wanting to win and host a regional and get back to Omaha. But you've seen some of these successful teams build off with non-D1s coming up to D1 and making money in their super senior years after a couple of years. And a conference pitcher of the year means he had a really good year. You bring in Cunningham, an outfielder from San Francisco State. He could swing the bat and was getting, I think, some preferred walk-on spots out of high school with limited tape because coaches couldn't watch him. So it's not like he was a D1 guy. Overcame all the injuries, a program being defunded and cut, and he's going to UCLA. Think about all these guys, and this is a team that is absolutely worth rooting for and your vested interest in the 2026 spring, all right? Because when the basketball season ends, whether it's early or in April, after that, we're going to turn into deep June. And UCLA softball want to keep making it to Oklahoma City. Baseball, trying to make it to Omaha, back-to-back times since the early 2010s when John Savage really had this program rolling. And if this is the last year at Jackie Robinson Stadium, if it truly is, then let's make it go out with an absolute bang. And even if it's not, they've got the players and I think the moxie there to go deliver a team that is seeking a national championship and certainly has the talent to do so. And that's why we should be excited. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.